I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate. All those moments will be lost in time. Like tears in rain. Time.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fragrance Aesthetics on the Lpearly channel. Today we're going to be going over cyberpunk fragrances. If you're interested in the idea of futuristic fragrances in general, or if you don't know what cyberpunk is, I would definitely stick around, because as some of you more familiar with this series may know, before we can get a cyberpunk fragrance, we first have to ask, what is cyberpunk? Cyberpunk can be difficult to define exactly, but is most commonly defined as high-tech, low-life. It features futures with great technological achievement, juxtaposed against societies with heavy amounts of decay and collapse. A very blunt visual metaphor for this is usually like a bright neon city with violent criminals lurking around every corner. Many cyberpunk media adheres to this visual philosophy, and thus many will feature a lot of those sprawling urban environments, some partially inspired by the real-life Kowloon walled city. Understanding this former Chinese settlement is essential to understanding the early origins of the cyberpunk genre. The Kowloon walled city was a city within British-controlled Hong Kong that was allowed autonomy during the initial negotiation of the new territories to Britain in 1898. It remained a small settlement until about 1945, when refugees from the Chinese Civil War repopulated Hong Kong, many settling in Kowloon walled city. Due to the city being controlled by technically neither British nor Chinese governments, it was neglected by both of them, eventually leading to the conditions that made the city infamous. Street gangs known as the Triads began to run the city due to the lack of interference from the Hong Kong police, leading to drugs and crime becoming rampant within the city. In an effort to stay within the lawless jurisdiction of the walled city, residents had the brilliant idea to begin building up instead of out. This coupled wonderfully with the complete lack of zoning laws or any other sort of government interference, and by the mid-80s the city was scheduled to be demolished due to the humanitarian concerns about the sanitary state of the city, with the residents being compensated and evacuated by 1994. Now you may be wondering why I'm talking about the Sino-British Joint Declaration of 1984 in a video about Cologne. Well, the living conditions within the Kowloon walled city and many other rapidly urbanizing villages served as visual inspiration for plenty of early cyberpunk media. Just look at some of these pictures and videos. This picture really took me out of it for a second. Like, imagine being here. Imagine what it would smell like. I guess that's what this video is for, right? If we also take a look at this clip from Bloodsport, which was one of the few movies to film in the city before its destruction, along with Crime Story by Jackie Chan. It is absolutely wild to imagine living here with 33,000 people living in an area the size of about 5.3 football fields. Within Kowloon walled city, you could go from one side of the city to another without touching the ground due to all the buildings being built upwards and such. This part really shows you just how cluttered looking up was. Although today, cyberpunk is heavily associated with the Cyberpunk 2077 series, the origins of the genre go back much further than that. Although many consider Blade Runner in 1982 and Akira in 1982 with the manga and 1988 with the film, many consider these two to be the earliest entries in the genre, but there is plenty of literature that had an impact on these two. Cyberpunk first evolved out of the science fiction of the 60s and the 70s, with societal troubles and the rapid advancement of technology, both inspiring its early print media, like Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep in 1968, which was the book that Blade Runner was based on, if some of you don't know, as well as William Gibson's Neuromancer in 1982. Both of these books served as titans of the cyberpunk genre in terms of influence and defining aspects of the genre. 1982 was just a huge year for cyberpunk in general, right? The genre proved to be popular across the world as the 90s rolled around, with video games like Deus Ex and System Shock coming out, as well as movies like Ghost in the Shell and The Matrix realizing many cyberpunk elements as well. On a side note, it's kind of really funny, but also really annoying that Cyberpunk 2077 just named themselves after the genre of cyberpunk. It makes researching stuff related to this aesthetic really annoying. It would be like if Lord of the Rings had just named themselves fantasy. So now that we've got a good idea of what the cyberpunk genre entails, we can begin to ask how that can be represented in fragrance. Can themes of dystopia and vibrant neon cities be represented in the olfactory sense? Is there anything on the market that can scratch your itch of wanting to smell like this guy, or this girl, or this guy? That's what we're going to find out today. So first we're going to be going over CyberGarden by Costume National, as well as Ghost in the Shell by Lpearly d'Orange. These are both brought up pretty often when discussing futuristic fragrances in general, so I'd say they fit the cyberpunk label in this context. I've mentioned Ghost in the Shell a couple times on this channel, so I'll try to link those videos in the description. For that reason, I'll go over CyberGarden first and then give my thoughts on Ghost in the Shell. CyberGarden was actually a very pleasant surprise to me. I sort of had mixed expectations going into this one, having heard of it forever, always having kind of heard of it mentioned next to Android in the Shell. This CyberGarden sort of opens up with a very noticeable vinyl plasticky smell. I'm kind of a big fan of it, but if you absolutely hated it, I would not hold it against you. I would totally get it. I don't think I would hold it against you at all. The plasticky mixes with the green notes straight off the top and is a very interesting combination. I'm not huge on green fragrances, but I did really like this one. There's just something like very nostalgic about this one to me. The vinyl plasticky notes sort of fade into an almost sour floral after a while, sticking pretty close to the skin and tapering off into a sort of non-existence after a while. By after a while, I mean pretty quickly, within 3 to 4 hours. This fragrance is a pretty pathetic silage, 3 to 4 hour max on my skin before it becomes virtually undetectable, no pun intended. I really loved it. I really love this fragrance. Unfortunately, it is kind of getting discontinued, harder to find, so it's hard to recommend. CyberGarden, very good scent, but kind of sad performance and is slowly going extinct. I still really love it though. Sometimes you love people, even though they have flaws. CyberGarden just hits that nostalgic plastic scent for me that I've been looking for a while, so I'm willing to make exceptions. It's definitely very cyberpunky. It's pretty light, not super dark. I think the comparisons to like a PS2 jungle level or a virtual plant, I think those might be a little bit far-fetched. There's a little bit of creaminess that comes out to it, barely, while you can still smell it, so that's nice. I would definitely recommend this if you can find it for cheap, if you're into niche fragrances like that. I might save up and buy a bottle. It is very rare, so actually don't buy it. It sucks. Save more for me. Moving on. Next, we've got Lpearly d'Orange, Ghost in the Shell. Yes, it is named after the anime that we kind of mentioned earlier. No, I don't know how they didn't get sued naming it this. I actually own this fragrance as well. I've got a little sampler back there. I've owned it for a while, actually. I ordered the CyberGarden sample for this video because I was tired of talking about a lot of the fragrances in these videos and not having them. But Android in the Shell, it's an interesting one to say the least. I know I said that about CyberGarden, but they get compared a lot, so I'll try to avoid comparing them until the end of this segment. Android in the Shell, super unique. I've talked about it a few times. I think I did mention it in the 90s CGI fragrance video, so check that out. Android in the Shell, white floral with pretty decent silage, probably better than CyberGarden, but not by much. The notes of milk and lily in the valley are super noticeable and waft off the skin pretty nicely. The yuzu is pretty pleasant, and the other weird standout notes from this, the metallic notes and the human skin, this sounds so weird to say. They can definitely be smelled at certain points, but they aren't sort of the main notes of the fragrance, if that makes sense. Android in the Shell, I don't really get why they went for a sci-fi association with it. I'm honestly kind of let down with that aspect, and whenever it's mentioned in futuristic fragrances, I don't know, it's just kind of weird to me. I feel the marketing was just kind of out of touch with it. I feel like you could call this something like Baby's Breath, and it would still fit. It's not a bad scent, but I just think the actual juice and like the marketing are just a little out of touch with each other. I feel like CyberGarden delivers on the cyberpunk / sci-fi option better, but I think that Android in the shell has better performance as like juice, because CyberGarden, it has pretty lousy longevity. I'm trying not to give too much praise to it because, like I said, my sample came in pretty recently and I know I have new toy syndrome with it, so I'm trying not to give it too much praise. Ghost in the Shell has been sitting on my dresser for a while, so it's pretty much old news to me. But to compare the two of them, I can see why they're grouped together so often. They're both sci-fi branded fragrances from popular niche brands. CyberGarden has a very light plasticky green mossiness to it, while Ghost in the Shell has not as bright milky floral notes that have a bit of kind of fuzziness to them due to the metallic and skin notes. Overall, I think they're both worth looking into if you're looking at futuristic fragrances. Actually, I lied. CyberGarden sucks. Don't buy it. Next up, we've got a couple of indie perfume companies. I did just want to give mention to a fragrance that I could not stop hearing people mention when I was doing a little bit of diving for this video, and that was Cyberpunk from Andromeda's Curse. I kind of have to include this one with that name, right? It's a little bit of cheating to include this, but it looks like Andromeda's Curse used to sell this on their Etsy page, but they haven't sold it in about a year or so. IndieScentLibrary.com gives us this description: synthetic cashmere leather jacket, holographic redwoods, neon lights, patchouli, chai tea, what says chai, I'm assuming it's chai tea, chai and black musk biofuel exhaust from your Trans Am as it burns into the smoggy sunset. Honestly, it sounds pretty cool. It's a shame it's discontinued. What is it with all these cool fragrances being discontinued? This and CyberGarden are both discontinued. Blech. Thankfully, we do have another indie pick that will satiate our hunger for futuristic fragrances. Introducing Deus Ex Machina from Alkemia, a fragrance with notes of fire-hardened steel, rusted iron, motor oil, wet cement, burnt copper wires, and gray amber. At least the gray amber sounds pleasant. All jokes aside, this does look super interesting. I would love to give this a try at some point. I don't think I would wear it in public unless I planned on going to a place full of people that I hated. Although I could see this being really pleasant, honestly. It has 0 reviews on their website, so one of you guys in the comments maybe go give it a whirl. Let me know how it goes, right? You could also probably include Industrial Sabotage from this brand as well. Crazy name. That one having notes of burnt wires, hot forged steel, broken machinery, and gunpowder. I've read some reviews, and some people said they smell a little bit of eucalyptus or like melon mint in there. So if that sounds up your alley, give it a go as well. Another cologne that I heard mentioned a lot in the conversation about futuristic smelling colognes was Luna Rossa Carbon by Prada. Personally, to me, I wasn't really a fan. The metallic notes that are claimed on Fragrantica, I didn't smell at all. I had kind of a weird experience with this one. I sprayed it on my wrist at the mall, was catching like faint whiffs of the top notes, and then it disappeared after like 20 minutes. I felt super scammed. Then about 10 minutes after it disappeared, it came back like with a roar. Rah! But this time it smelled exactly like Dior Sauvage, just like everyone said it would. So not bad, I guess. But for the designer price tag and for the purpose of today's video, I don't really recommend it. I don't smell the metallicness at all. Maybe it just doesn't come out strong on my skin. I have no idea. Maybe weird mall tester. I don't know. If you guys had better experiences with this one, let me know in the comments. I was honestly pretty disappointed. I sprayed Tom Ford Oud Mineral on my other wrist, and it seemed way more cyberpunk with this one. The salty seagrass smell kind of reminded me of like a darkly lit like cyberpunk cafe. Oud Mineral smelled like this image to me, and this feels pretty cyberpunk to me. Don't know how to explain it. Kind of reminds me of the fucked up puppet sections of Blade Runner that nobody talks about, with Sebastian and Pris, whatever her name. It's always the neon cities and Rutger Hauer and never the weird puppet stuff. I'm not going to include Luna Rossa Carbon or Oud Mineral in the list at the end of this video, but I felt like they were worth a mention. One cologne that I can personally recommend is Ite Libre de Orange. Hermann at my side seemed like a shadow. Or
Hermann, à mes côtés, me paraissait une ombre.
Whatever you'd like to call it. I've also done a full review of this on my channel. I will link that in the description, but I will go over it again in this video. This one is a very dark aquatic cologne. I do mean dark aquatic. This cologne made me feel stupid for calling JPEG Labo Le Parfum a dark aquatic. Hermann is very peppery, but the black currant, geosmin, and rose evoke a scent that almost reminds you of like the aftermath of a heavy thunderstorm almost. The patchouli shines through a little bit at times and gives it a very cold feeling. I know it sounds strange to recommend a thunderstorm scent in a video about cyberpunk colognes, but trust me, it makes sense. All the cyberpunk cities are always raining, right? There's just a unique and otherworldly feeling to this cologne, and I feel like it kind of borders on a sci-fi feeling more so than Ite Libre de Orange's actual sci-fi themed fragrance, which is Ghost in the Shell. The note breakdown on Hermann is really weird. It doesn't exactly give you the best idea of what this one is going to smell like. I got this one in my ELDO sampler set, and I've been really enjoying it. So I'd recommend it if you're looking for something watery, yet also mysterious and dark. I feel like this fragrance is right at home in a cyberpunk setting. It's got pretty good projection and longevity, so I would recommend this one. I do like this one. Next up is CDG2 by Comme des Garcons, released in 1999, just like me. This one is a Chypre floral. I have not personally smelled it, but it has earned the reputation of smelling quite otherworldly and futuristic, but also very old school due to being released, in 1999. Often described as a mix of ink, tea, earthy, and metallic notes. Many people seem to agree that it has a glossy, almost like magazine-like smell accompanying these notes as well. Aldehyde and incense notes are said to stand out to many, and it seems like this one is a very deep, varied, complex scent that can be pretty difficult to figure out. It was designed to be unisex and seems to succeed in doing so. The note breakdown is pretty dense on this one, so it seems like one that definitely needs to be experienced in person to truly get a hold of. The blurb from the company does say that it was inspired by Japanese calligraphy, so that's that. Maybe we can kind of interpret that as a mix of the Japanese influences on cyberpunk, as well as the influence of detective noir fiction. I'm no English teacher, though. I'm not looking for the symbolism and everything. I'm just the cologne guy. Moving on from CDG2, we've got Ganymede by Marc-Antoine Bahois. This one has received a lot of hype, with some people referring to it as a masterpiece. I haven't been so blessed to feel the hands of God touching me through this fragrance, but I can, kind of see the hype behind it. I've been hearing about it long before I started making this video. It's sort of described as a woody, floral, and spicy fragrance. This one is also said to be very unique and otherworldly, described by someone as spaceship air freshener. It has mineral, metallic notes, notes of suede and leather, with the akigala wood and saffron said to be major standouts from this one. A lot of the reviews say it smells like glossy magazine pages or new car smell, kind of similar to CDG2, evoking a nostalgic scent that may remind someone of a hardware store or a dentist's office, which is kind of a strange thing to want to smell like, but the real fragrance freaks will understand. Like this video if you're a real #fragfreak. Ganymede is also reported to have monster projection, absolutely nuclear, so that's something to keep in mind. It is good to make sure you're getting your money's worth, but you also don't want to be choking out the entire room if you can help it. This is compared to Bois Imperial pretty often. I'm not going to get into comparing the two because I've smelled neither, but I figured it was worth giving a mention to that as well. Alright, well that pretty much covers every fragrance I thought was worth including on the list. This video was a ton of fun to make, and I really appreciate all the supportive comments from everyone. Although fragrance is a more recent passion of mine, I've been into cyberpunk media like EYE Divine Cybermancy and Blade Runner long before I started streaming or doing content creation of any kind. Although I don't consider myself a content creator in the traditional sense, as while I've only been making YouTube videos for a few months, I've been streaming for about 5 years on Twitch, and started dual streaming to TikTok in about April of last year. Content creation has always been a hobby of mine, never as a source of income. Your continued viewership is more than enough support, and it means the world to me. However, I am between jobs due to unfortunate life circumstances. I have recently opened a Patreon. Currently, I only have one $5 tier that will let you put your name in the credits of these very videos, as well as offering ad-free downloads of all future YouTube uploads if people would be interested. I've thought about giving out like some behind the scenes like blooper reels, me cursing when I have cotton mouth and can't get the take right, if people would be interested. But like I mentioned, we do stream on TikTok and Twitch as well, so feel free to follow us there. If you enjoyed the video, if I left anything out, or if you have any suggestions relating to the video, the Patreon, anything like that, please leave a comment. Please let me know. If you didn't enjoy the video, leave a comment. Although I don't know why you watched this far if you didn't enjoy the video. There's nothing else I really have to say to you about that. But there's really nothing else I have to say in general. So, thank you for watching, everybody. I appreciate your support. We'll try to put out more epic videos. Bye.